I'm louder.
I'll get louder. Okay, we'd like to thank everybody for coming. We're going to call this to order. First thing, we're just getting some of our business agenda items out of the way, so we can go to reports. Gene, anything in addition? We have the minutes from the last meeting are on the back of the agenda that you have in front of you. Gene, anything to add or any corrections?
I'm fine, unless anybody else does.
Okay. So we'll go to our treasurer, Pat. Give a report.
Well, I would just report that as of the end of July 31st, our fund balance is $2,023.59.
Okay. Stats updates. Melissa.
We've got a few quick updates here. Melissa, I'll let you give the pushback one, but the go ahead.
My update is that is the incorrect date. We're actually going to be doing it on the second Tuesday of September. We're going to hold our third in the series of our pushback press conferences, and it's going to be on the second Tuesday, which I believe is the 10th, not the 9th. So I apologize for that. On your seats, you all have a copy of our latest stat updates. Just wanted to point out some of the highlights of the different initiatives. This is really loud. Is it okay back there? Okay. The heroin and opiate stat is going to be meeting on the 19th, and we're going to be discussing a number of different things, but this pushback campaign, just not even 3 months old yet, has really taken off, so it's been really busy. We have a lot of great materials that we're getting developed. We have a lot of great materials already printed. There's some out on the table out there. Please help yourselves. And if you want them in bulk for any presentations, or if you have a presentation that some of our staff members can go to, please let us know. We're always happy to get out into the public. And we also have a new stock of our window clings. So if you picked one up before and it didn't stick, please grab one that will stick. I've tested it out and they will remain. Another stat as far as that I will update on is both related to our recovery stat as well as our heroin and opiate stat. We're going to be planning some fall sessions with the public library, and this is the information on that. We're going to send more information out as it becomes available, but it's going to be intended to not only raise awareness, again, on the scope of the problem, but also ways that we all play a part. So that is some exciting initiatives. As far as volunteer opportunities, the Family Day in the Garden is this Saturday, so if you're around from 11 to 2, we'd love to have your help at the East Town Garden, which is on the corner of 7th and Jefferson. It should be a good time. We're going to be having a couple different booths there, including the Real Happy Hour, which Erin can update on, as well as our pushback information, and have some activities for families. So if anybody's around, if you want to stop in, say hello, meet some of the neighbors, that would be great. And the last thing that I'll update on is that the Prevention Conference, Wisconsin Prevention Conference, is an annual event. This is some of the themes this year. They're doing some tracks that could be very beneficial to the work that all of you do in your day-to-day lives or within the community. And we are offering scholarships, but the scholarships are due up by the 9th, end of the day on the 9th. So if you're interested in that, email me. I will forward you the information on how to go ahead and apply for those scholarships.
I just got a couple of quick updates. The Real Happy Hour, we've developed our pitch. If you go to the website, therealhappyhour.org, you'll see under the Downloads tab the talking points, so you can use those throughout the community and try to get the Real Happy Hour on some agendas, help us network, help us get the message out. So that's kind of where we're at with that group. We're going to be meeting later this month. We're still trying to pull together time, but we're really moving forward, trying to mobilize the community and get involved anywhere we can. Our impaired driving stat, we're going to talk about later on today after the forum here, kind of the next steps with that. And the Western Marathon County stat, we're actually meeting this afternoon with a few principals and administrators from the rural school districts, Edgar, Marathon, Athens, to kind of talk about what we're doing here, some of our programs with the partnership, Real Happy Hour, Farm to School and such. So Hopefully that meeting goes well today, and I'm sure we'll report on that later as well. That's all I have.
Okay, do we have any other partner updates from any other groups? No? Okay, I'm going to turn this back over to Aaron. He's going to introduce our panelists today for our discussion on alcohol. And as most of you know, we try to make these informative and really get the information out to you. The structure has worked extremely well, but the follow-up is how do you engage and what can you do? So Aaron's going to have some opportunities for you afterwards. There should be some sign-up sheets going out there. So please sign up if you're not on part of the email chain right now. Sign up for those, and Melissa will get you on our weekly updates, and we get a lot of information goes out there, our opportunities, our status updates, and options for you to try and engage and try to address some of these issues. Aaron, thanks.
So I know we're here today to talk about alcohol, but I want to start out with heroin and illicit drugs, and this is something that has been in the news a lot lately. It's been in the local news, it's been statewide, it's been national. I know personally I've seen a lot of coverage with heroin and illicit drugs, and we have, like Melissa said, the great pushback campaign locally. But I don't know if you all have noticed this too, but every time that I see a story about heroin or illicit drugs, I usually hear one of these three words somewhere in that story. And hopefully you guys were able to pick up the new handout for the pushback campaign. It actually says right here on the top, they're called Gateway for a reason, and I'll read it here quickly. People do not wake up one day and decide they're going to start using heroin or other drugs. For most, substance abuse begins with the big three: alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. So when we talk about this heroin epidemic in our country, there's a multitude of factors that go into it, but like I said, every story is mentioning the big three. And so today we're going to focus on alcohol mainly, and I'm not going to stand up here and show you all the funny cartoons and about the alcohol culture in Wisconsin. We all know that there is a strong alcohol culture in our state, and most of us are aware that it is a problem in our state. You know, we always hear the stories about the first-time drunk driver. We always hear the stories of the young person at prom or graduation. But think about all those stories we don't hear, that kind of families that stay silent. And so really, when we think about alcohol, it's one of those problems that isn't always right in your face in the media. There's a lot of kind of hidden costs. There's a lot of hidden things that go into it as well. And so one of the things we want to highlight in March of 2013, the Burden of Alcohol report was released. And I'm just going to play a quick video of some of the local coverage we received. Opening that sound for it. I'll just give you the list of it here. So in some of the handouts you received, it kind of highlights the cost of alcohol in Marathon County. So if you look at your sheet here, the annual economic cost of excessive alcohol use in Marathon County is estimated at over $152 million a year. So you'll see on the left side column, they break it down into what we actually pay for. So there's $16.8 million in healthcare, $110 million in lost productivity, and then the other costs would be motor vehicle crashes, other consequences, like that. So what this report has shown us is that alcohol costs a lot of money in our state, and even locally. It costs every man, woman, or child, every resident of Marathon County, about $1,100 a year. And again, we talk about those hidden costs. So they're hidden in healthcare costs, they're hidden in our criminal justice system costs. But this is the burden that alcohol has on our state. And statewide, it's $6.8 billion is what alcohol costs our state every year. So kind of the bottom side of your sheet there, you'll see that they could pull out some data saying that in 2011, excessive alcohol consumption in Marathon County contributed to at least 31 deaths, over 1,300 hospitalizations, and over 1,300, almost 1,400 alcohol-related arrests. So if we kind of pull that out, every day in Marathon County, we're looking at about 7 people that are either hospitalized or arrested due to alcohol. So that's 7 people every day, 365 days a year. So one of the things that came out with that burden report as well was the statewide strategies to reduce alcohol misuse. And you'll see in here, I believe you got these sheets as well, but the first is the drinking age of 21, making that consistent. Right now, Wisconsin state law, parents can purchase alcohol for their children under 21 to consume with them at a bar or restaurant. I'm not going to go through all this, but why it matters is the teenage brain and the mixed messages where you can legally drink with your parents in your home, but then if you go out with your friends, it's illegal to drink. And 2 weeks ago, Melissa and I were at the CADCA National Training in Austin, Texas, and we had the pleasure of meeting people from all over the country, and a lot of the discussion I brought up was this exact law, is that in Wisconsin's the only state, there's a few parts of Texas, but you can buy alcohol for your underage child, and people really could not wrap their brains around that. They couldn't believe that you were able to take your 15-year-old to a bar and buy them alcohol. So it's something that, again, while Wisconsin's the only state, but it's one of those statewide strategies that's going to improve to reduce the excess alcohol use. Again, alcohol taxes is the second priority area. Our beer tax in Wisconsin hasn't changed since 1969, the year we landed on the moon. So all of these things are the statewide priorities. And the last one there is the sobriety checkpoints. So sobriety checkpoints allow law enforcement to stop traffic for the sole purpose of checking drivers for intoxication. And right now under Wisconsin state statute, it's illegal, but there are 38 other states where this is legal, and it is a good tool for law enforcement teams as well. So again, these kind of are the 3 that the state is working on. We don't have a ton of control locally, but these will really help in reducing the burden on our state. And so now I want to talk a little bit about the burden or the cost of alcohol in our community. I want to really make it local, make it pertinent to Marathon County. And so this first graph here shows the OWI arrests for 2013. And this is from the Marathon County Jail from the 1st of this year to June 30th, so the first 6 months of the year. And you'll see, in total, there's 372 OWI arrests that have been reported to the jail. And I've been, after talking with the interim jail administrator and members of law enforcement, this number, the 372, doesn't actually include all of the OWI offenses because if you get notified, you can be released to a responsible party that evening. So the 372 are just the offenders who were admitted to jail that night. So the number is actually larger than 372. And if you look on the chart here, the large red and green portions are the first and second time offenders. And so they actually make up 209 or 56% of all offenses. So a lot of the time we hear about the multiple offenders in the news. We see the 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever it may be, but the majority of OWI offenders are first or second time offenders. And in fact, 2/3 of drunk driving deaths in Wisconsin are caused by drunk drivers with no prior OWI convictions. So most fatal crashes are due to a first time offender. So I want to just, does anybody have any idea what this range of numbers could be, 80 to 2,000 in relation to drunk driving? Anybody have a guess? Okay. This is the estimated number of times that the average drunk driver will drive while impaired for every time they are apprehended. So essentially it's saying if you get an OWI, you have driven 80 to 2,000 times impaired before you get that ticket. So it's a pretty large range, but I just wanted to, I'm a math guy, I like to kind of bring all this stuff out. So if we've had 372 OWI arrests in Marathon County this year already, and we multiply that by 80, the number of occurrences that the average person has before they're arrested, we're looking at a potential of around 30,000 drunk driving incidents in the last 6 months. It's kind of an estimate, it's based on that 80 to 2,000 theory, but it is a number. And so I wanted to just look at it a different way too. So 26% is the percentage of Wisconsin adults who have admitted to driving under the influence in the past year. And so we take that number and multiply it by our county's population, and we're looking at 34, almost 35,000 number of drunk drivers in the past year in Marathon County. So if we break that down even further, we're looking at 95 people driving under the influence every day in Marathon County. That's how big of a problem drunk driving is. You know, again, these are kind of estimates, but it is the fact that, you know, the numbers don't lie. We have over 35,000 incidents of drunk driving. That equates to 95 every day. So the last thing I want to talk about quickly before I turn it over to our panel is alcohol outlet density. So what we mean by alcohol outlet density is essentially how many places you can buy alcohol in a community. So what research shows is that the density of alcohol outlets is associated with increased consumption. So the more places there are to buy alcohol, the higher the binge drinking rate, the higher the motor vehicle crashes, violence, other crime, health problems, hospitalizations. So it is a best practice strategy to look at alcohol outlet density and see how available it is in your community. So I was able to do that as well. So if we look at the population per alcohol outlet for these three counties, we have Milwaukee County, Dane County, and Marathon County, just to compare. If we look at the outlets, or the population per each outlet, in Milwaukee County it's one alcohol outlet for every 483 people. Dane County is a little bit lower at 440, or a little bit higher, and we're at 327. So we actually have a higher alcohol outlet density in Marathon County than, you know, Dane County, I think the University of Madison, and Milwaukee County. You know, people always say state of Milwaukee, we can't compare them, but you know, here locally we have more alcohol outlets per person than either of these two places. So one of the things I've been looking at too is in relation to alcohol outlets and crime. And a lot of research now is saying that the more alcohol outlets are in a specific area, the more dense and the more frequent you're going to see crime. So what I've done in collaboration with law enforcement is, let me see if I can find it here, is used recent crime data as well as the alcohol outlet density to create a map of kind of what that looks like. So I'll just we're going to load this to the website soon, so hopefully you guys can play around with it, but I'll take this off first. So right here, this would be the city of Wausau. We're just looking at the alcohol outlet density. So the little red tags would be Class B alcohol licenses, which would be an establishment where you could buy and consume alcohol on site. So your bars, your restaurants, that type of thing. Then the black tags would be considered Class A alcohol licenses, which is where you can purchase on the premises but not consume. So you're looking at, you know, liquor stores, convenience stores, gas stations, that type of thing. So you can see, you know, obviously in some of the areas it's going to be a little bit more densely populated. Third Avenue here, the downtown area. I think this is 6th Street here. So you can see kind of, you know, if you kind of picture Wausau, you can see those areas downtown. They have the bars and the restaurants, and over on Stewart Avenue you have the different restaurants and grocery stores and things like that. So in total here there's 111 places you can buy alcohol in the city of Wausau alone. So that's, you know, there's quite a few. And so what I did then is looked at the city of Wausau. I just looked at crime data from June 1st through July 30th, so 2 months, and plotted those points. And so, you know, I encourage you to look at this a little bit more in detail later. But you can see, you know, in some of these corridors where there's a lot of alcohol outlets, there is more frequent crime as well. Especially in some of these stretches down here northward, you'll see, you know, it's almost like the crime runs parallel with the alcohol outlets. And then one layer with the Wausau map that I added were the drug-related arrests. So I believe these data points were from the Daily Herald. They had points plotted a few months back in regards to the pushback stuff. So The blue dots then on the screen would be the drug-related arrests. So they're a little bit more sporadic, but you can still see there's some patterns within those as well. And then I also wanted to, one of our larger areas would be the Everest Metro. So we're looking at Weston, Schofield. And so again, the alcohol licenses are the same. The red tags are the Class B, or the bars and the restaurants, and the black are the convenience stores, gas stations, and such. And so I actually pulled the crime data from January through July, so it's a 6-month period. But you can still see here, the stretch on Schofield Avenue, on Business 51 here, where there's alcohol. It seems like the crime is kind of following those as well. So that's just something that we're starting to look at now. We're I want to keep tracking crime and just seeing how that plays out. But it's another tool. It gives a good visual of what our community looks like and how many alcohol outlets we have. And so now I'm going to turn it over. We have a few of our panel members today. We have Captain Mark Hall from the Everest Metro Police Department. We have Karen Slattery from North Central Healthcare, Officer Bob Wilcox from the Wausau Police Department, Lori Yari from the Justice System, and Ken, forgive me, I can't pronounce your last name. Shanyo is an OWI Corp graduate. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to kind of just tell you how they see it in their line of work, and how it affects our community through their eyes too. So, Captain Hall, you can go ahead. I think we want you up here for filming purposes.
Good afternoon, and thanks everybody for coming. Anytime that we're considering the cost of alcohol abuse and OWI, I think the first cost that we need to weigh is the human cost. These are from the 2011 facts and figures from Wisconsin DOT website. 565 persons were killed in Wisconsin in motor vehicle crashes in 2011. Of those 565, 12% of those, 57 pedestrians and 12 bicyclists, were not even in a motor vehicle. 14% were motorcycle drivers, or 80. Of the 565 persons killed, 40% of them died in alcohol-related crashes. Of the 371 drivers who were killed and tested for alcohol concentration, 130 of those, or 35%, had an alcohol concentration of 0.08 or higher. 55% of all of these crashes occur off the state highway and interstate systems. So these are all crashes that are occurring on our streets, on our county roads, on the, out in front of your house. To put this in a little different perspective, one traffic crash in Wisconsin occurs in every 4.7 minutes. One injury or fatality occurs every 17.8 minutes. And one person is injured or killed in an alcohol-related crash every 2.7 hours, and that's just in the state of Wisconsin. In Marathon County in the same year, 2011, we had a total of 119 alcohol-related crashes. 5 of those were fatal crashes, which resulted in 6 fatalities. 53 of those crashes were injury crashes, resulting in 76 injuries. Again, that's just in Marathon County. We have to consider as well the cost to society, the cost to our communities. This is from the National Security Council's website. An average fatality accident costs $1.2 million. That's one fatality, fatal crash. A crash involving an incapacitating injury, about $60,000. One crash involving a non-incapacitating injury, about $20,000. One crash with a possible injury, that would be where a person feels some pain but is not later diagnosed with a serious injury, about $11,000. And a crash with property damage only, about $8,300. In a year, alcohol crashes account for about 14 million in hospital charges, and that doesn't include the physician charges for the care in the hospital or the aftercare, the follow-up medical care after the patient leaves the hospital. And so we all see this impact not only to the economy of our communities, but health insurance premiums and all the related costs that go with health care. Again, from Wisconsin's DOT website, Wisconsin has the highest rate of drunken driving in the nation. More than 26% of Wisconsin adults, and I think the same statistic you quoted a little bit ago, who were surveyed admitted they had driven under the influence of alcohol in the previous year. And this was according to a nationwide study by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. More than 44,000 convictions for drunken driving offenses in Wisconsin. And again, this would have been, now this was in 2009. It was most recent statistics I can find from the DOT website on this particular issue. If you consider that, an OWI arrest involves about 3 hours of an officer's time. By the time he identifies a problem with driving behavior, makes contact, goes through some investigation, field sobriety exercises, some interview things, takes the person into custody, transports them to a place where he can get a chemical test, you're looking at about 3 hours' time. That time has even increased slightly in the last year as the Supreme Court has now required that any blood test that's not consensual requires a search warrant. Again, you're adding more time to the arrest and processing of each individual intoxicated driver. So if you look at about 3 hours of an officer's time in that first initial contact, and 44,000 convictions for drunk driving offenses in Wisconsin, you're looking at 132,000 officer hours just in the initial contact and investigation of a drunk driving case. Now, these are hours that officers aren't checking business doors, aren't patrolling your neighborhoods, aren't responding to other things that could take a higher priority. They're removing those officers from public safety for that period of time. That's just the initial contact. You can generally consider there's going to be another 2 to 3 hours of court time involved in motions hearings, involved in other issues leading up to trial. And an OWI trial could go anywhere from 4, 5, 8 to sometimes 2-day jury trial for an OWI offense. Now you're tying up that officer for another 16 hours on top of all that. If you, again, consider 44,000 convictions for drunk driving last year, you're looking at another over 700,000 officer hours involved in those court activities, almost 1 million officer hours tied up in OWI arrests and prosecutions in a year's worth of time. That's not taking in consideration time that the district attorney's office has to prepare for these cases. Those are all also time that the taxpayers are paying for and allocating resources there. Alcohol-related crashes killed 238 people in Wisconsin. Again, this is in 2009, and injured 4,000. Approximately 45% of all fatal crashes in Wisconsin in 2009 were alcohol-related, and about 40% of all fatal motorcycle accidents. According to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, it's estimated that 17.6 million people in the U.S. are dependent on or abuse alcohol. In 2008, the Pew Center on States reported that an astounding 1 in every 100 adults in the U.S. was behind bars. While drunk driving gets the most attention, the incidence of other alcohol-involved crimes, including domestic violence, underage drinking, and assault, has reached staggering proportions. And we see that alcohol use and abuse also is a large factor in a majority of the violent crimes that we respond to, the domestic abuse incidents that we respond to, even a lot of the property crime that we respond to These individuals are under the influence of alcohol or some other controlled substance at the time they're committing these crimes. 5.3 million adults, 36% of those under correctional supervision at the time were drinking at the time of their conviction offense. 40% of state prisoners convicted of violent crimes were under the influence of alcohol at the time of their offense. And the more violent the crime, the greater that percentage went up. In 2000, U.S. agencies surpassed the 100 billion a day barrier in spending to incarcerate individuals with serious addiction problems. Rehabilitating and managing offenders who misuse alcohol has proven to be an extraordinarily difficult. Despite traditional sanctions and the ever-increasing terms of incarceration, addiction drives many of the offenders to continue committing the crimes, which results in a revolving door of the criminal justice system. Alcohol and drug-involved offenders are overwhelming the criminal justice system, creating unwieldy court dockets, burdensome caseloads, overcrowded jails and prisons. Yet, programs and sanctions have had little impact on the rate of alcohol-involved crime. Incarceration, the traditional justice solution, is inordinately expensive and minimally effective at best. Virtually everyone involved in this issue agrees we can't afford to incarcerate our way out of the problem. Again, these were from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. When we're looking at the cost to an individual, this is from MSN Money website. The typical OWI arrest results in about a $10,000 cost to the individual when all things are put together. The penalties are intended to discourage the behavior. Alcohol played a role in nearly 32% of all U.S. automobile fatalities in 2009, the last year that these figures were available. That's 10,839 deaths, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. On the average, one alcohol-impaired driving fatality occurred nationwide about every 48 minutes in 2009. Police arrested more than 1.4 million people in 2009 for driving under the influence of intoxicants. So what are some of these costs? Well, initially, there may be the cost of bail for getting yourself out of jail that first night before appearing in court. That could run anywhere from $150 to $2,500, depending on what offense of OWI. Towing could cost you anywhere from $100 to $150 in Marathon County. But what you're also not considering is until you have a chance to go pick up your car, you're going to be paying storage fees for that car from the towing company. Insurance is going to be one of the biggest costs. If you get an OWI conviction, it will likely affect your insurance rate for at least the next 3 to 5 years, because that's going to stay on your record, and you're going to continue to be evaluated based on that OWI for that period of time. Illinois estimates that the high-risk insurance costs an additional $1,500 a year for those 3 to 5 years. That's over and above what you're already paying for your auto insurance. Then there are legal fees, anywhere from $250 if you're just going to go in and enter a quick guilty plea, up to $25,000 if you continue to take it through motions hearings and through a jury trial. Fines will range, according to this site, anywhere from $300 to $1,200. There will be, generally the court will assign you or sentence you to have an alcohol evaluation. The cost is anywhere from $150 to $2,000 for alcohol education and treatment as well. If you've had multiple offenses, it may require you installing additional equipment in your vehicle, ignition interlock device, in some cases even an electronic monitoring bracelet or something on that order, anywhere from $100 or $10 a day to $300 per month. Finally, let's look at the cost to officers and their own safety as they're out in the field. There are officers who were accidentally killed in the line of duty in 2011. 30 died as a result of automobile accidents. 5 were struck by vehicles. 4 officers died in motorcycle accidents. Of the 5 officers that were struck by vehicles and not in a vehicle, 3 were out on traffic stops or roadblocks, and 2 were directing traffic or assisting motorists. This news story as of July 15th this year is a quick illustration of that. The man accused in a drunk driving crash that killed a Willoughby police officer admitted his guilt Monday morning, July 15th. Scott Leland, 45, pleaded guilty to aggravated vehicular homicide in connection with the September 21st accident that killed 32-year-old Willoughby police officer Jason Greshko. Officer Greshko was on his way to a call. The dash cam video from his cruiser shows that his emergency lights were on and operating. It shows that he was traveling northbound on Harmony Lane in Willoughby at about 9:30 p.m. and also that the pickup driven by Leland turned in front of him, forcing the officer to swerve to avoid hitting him and hitting a tree and killing him. In exchange for Leland's guilty plea, prosecutors agreed to drop 2 other aggravated vehicular homicide charges and 2 charges of child endangering, which were filed because his 2 children were in the car with him at the time. They were not injured. Prosecutors agreed to recommend a sentence of 4.5 years, although defense attorneys believed he only deserved 1 year. Leland's alcohol level was .149, nearly twice the legal limit. Officer Greshko left behind a wife and a 3-year-old daughter. Thank you.
As you know, my name is Karen Slattery, and I'm from North Central Healthcare, and I do the OWI assessments for Marathon, Lincoln, and Lambeling County, but primarily I'm going to talk about Marathon County. In the last year, I have seen 831 people for assessments. That does not mean that all the OWIs occurred in this last year. Sometimes people wait a period of time, years, sometimes even 15 years or more, before they have the actual assessment done. The average age that I see is anywhere from 16 to about 80. So there's quite a wide variety. I guess I would say most of the time I see people with a blood alcohol level of probably over 0.1 to anywhere to 0.5. It can vary. Many are in the 0.2 ranges, so that's pretty significant alcohol use. The OWI assessment in Marathon County costs $165. If you're in Lincoln or Langley, it's $210. What happens with the assessment is I see people and talk with them individually. They're also required to have collateral with. What misconception is that I don't just do alcohol assessments. I do alcohol and drug assessments, so some people are wondering why I'm asking them about other drugs. And I remind them that it's an AOD assessment. So those things are taken into consideration when I see someone. My job is to determine what level of care to get. That is either education or counseling. If somebody is referred to education, group dynamics is usually the first option. That's at the Tech. It's an 8-week course, and it costs about $221.50, plus a book. Multiple offender, that is for someone who has had more than one offense. They have usually completed group dynamics, and that costs us $331. If somebody is referred to treatment, there are many outpatient facilities in Wausau that people can go to. Some require insurance, some go on an ability to pay or sliding fee scale. Generally speaking, I would say that the average cost of an individual session ranges between $100 and $200 a session. There are group sessions that can be recommended from the treatment provider, and that can run, $40 to $50 an hour. So there's quite a variety of costs between that. If somebody is referred to day treatment at our facility, that program for 6 weeks costs about $6,000. If people go to inpatient detox, that's about $1,425 a day. That's just base rate. The rest of seeing people, doctors, and evaluations, that's additional onto that. So it costs more. If some people are going to more of an inpatient treatment facility, that could be $8,000 to $10,000 easy, depending on the length of the program. If somebody goes to Hazelden, you're talking over $30,000. So it's quite high cost for people to have an OWI in Wisconsin and in Wausau. One misconception is that I run across my time up. Okay. That everybody who has the first OWI, they think they are going to group dynamics, and that not necessarily is the case, because I evaluate people individually, and it goes according to what their use and impact on their life has been. So a lot of people are disappointed when they come to see me that they may not go there, but I'm trying to get them to the appropriate level of care and get what they need. I don't know what else. I guess that's all I can say. I'm not too wordy, so don't ask everybody about that.
Thank you both for sharing that. And I don't think we have to say too much more. I mean, we, both Karen and Mark gave great examples of the cost not only on individuals, but law enforcement, community, our society. So I want to move the discussion now to what are we doing locally to reduce the burden of alcohol? Because we can sit here and talk all day about the problem and the cost and the money, but our community is actually, and the Partnership Council is leading a lot of the efforts too, but our law enforcement, our justice system, we're working together to reduce the burden, and there is a lot of great stuff locally. So I'm going to turn it over to our local
My name is Laura Yari, and I'm the Justice System Coordinator for Marathon County. One of the programs that we are doing right now is the OWI court program. It's based on the National Drug Court model. Back in 2010, Marathon County was awarded a 3-year grant for $350,000 to implement this court program that we use to focus on felony OWI offenders. One of the criteria of getting into the program is that you have a pending felony offense that would make you eligible to go to prison. So this program is for people who have been through the assessments and treatment programs and continue to struggle with remaining sober. They typically have a lot of issues going on in their life on top of the alcoholism, unemployment, homelessness, mental health issues, a lot of things over the years that has been along with their drinking. We have served 30 people in the program. We have 12 graduates, there's 18 in the program, and there are 3 that are pending approval to get into the program. The program is intended to be a year long if you have no violations. However, that has not really happened. Typically what we're seeing is people are taking at least 18 months to get through the program. It is a program where we bring treatment and accountability together so that we have people in very intensive treatment programs, but we are also monitoring them. For the first 3 months that they're in the program, they wear a monitor on their ankle that measures alcohol coming out of their skin 24/7. If they have violations, they stay in that phase until they have 90 days with no violations. The second phase, after they have been able to maintain sobriety for 90 days, they petition to move into the second phase where it's then 120 days where they are coming in for testing 3 times a week. They're continuing with very intensive treatment. They continue to come to court. In phase 1, they come to court every week and report to the judge and the team. In phase 2, they come every other week. Every week, there are a group of professionals that staff all of the individuals in this program. So we have judges, district attorney's office, treatment professionals, our jail program coordinator, defense attorneys, probation and parole agents. We all meet and discuss each person's progress, and the judge then addresses the person individually in court and goes over both their progress and if they've had any issues or problems with following the rules. Part of the program is based on incentives and sanctions. You get praise and you get rewards for doing well. You get sanctions when things don't go well. We also, we try to be creative with sanctions, use other things besides incarceration. Incarceration is typically one of our last resorts. The attempt is to give meaningful sanctions, so we do a lot of essay writing and roundtabling with the team to discuss behavior. Sometimes we'll do community service that helps the person get out and socialize and not isolate. So there's a variety of different things. Once the person moves into phase 3, the program is a little less intensive. It's their opportunity to get out on their own. We're not watching them as closely. We're not requiring them to be as in many appointments, but we are testing them as frequent or more frequent to ensure that they are able to maintain their sobriety. Anytime they're in a phase and they have a violation of use, they automatically restart the phase. The program does require that they remain sober for a full year before they are discharged from the program. And then we hold a nice graduation ceremony, and we do have an alumni association where 10 of our graduates participate in that, and they have meetings and support each other. They also help us when we have somebody new coming into the program or considering the program. They will, some of them will meet with new participants and kind of let them know what the program is all about and what's expected of them. Our alumni group also takes on certain projects. Right now this year we have a community garden where people are within the program are working and donating what comes out of the garden to the food pantries. So they are doing projects that give back. They are required to do a lot of community service. Many of them use the community service to help pay for their fines and their fees, but also continue to do community service because they have the opportunity to meet people who remain sober. Participants are also required to go to 3 self-help groups each week and report back to the meetings that they've attended. They all have sponsors that help them remain sober. They have a case manager that meets with them on a regular basis. Plus they have a probation agent. So it is a very, very labor-intensive program. There are a lot of people investing time in these individuals to help them remain sober. Right now we have a 100% success rate, and every time I say that I knock on wood. We have not had to kick anybody out of the program. None of our alumni have had a new arrest. We've not had anything real bad happen. So we've had really good outcomes considering we're starting to work with individuals who are already on typically their 5th or 6th offense. So it's been very promising. We went with this model because it is evidence-based. We went through all of the trainings prior to getting our grant, and we are following the model, everything that's required with the 10 key components. There is a National Association of Drug Court Professionals website that has a lot of information about this model and how effective it can be. The key is to have the treatment, accountability, and support all working very closely together. One of our major issues has been helping people meet basic needs. It's very difficult to maintain sobriety when you have nowhere to live, you have no means to survive, medical care, and those things have been very challenging to make sure that the people have resources to focus on their recovery. And with that said, Ken is here today. He is one of our graduates from the program, and he is going to talk a little bit about his experience with the program.
Hi, my name is Ken Shanu, and I'm nervous, so. Yeah, I've struggled with alcoholism for over 20-something years. I had my first blackout when I was 14, and on May 15th of 2011, I had been arrested for a 6th offense drunk driving. I had previous sobriety. I had 4 years at one time when I was married, but I had relapsed, and during that relapse is when I had been arrested for the 6th offense drunk driving. And I honestly believe if it wasn't for the OWI program, I'd be back out, or I'd be in prison or dead, you know. And prison doesn't do anything. You know, I have to go to prison for whatever 3 years or whatever they give me. But most likely, I know I'd be, my history says I'd be back out there drinking again. And I would keep on drinking until either I ended up in prison for killing somebody or killing myself. The OWI program, I believe, has it saved my life. You know. It was really intense, an intense program. I completed it in March, so I guess you can consider me a success story. Yeah, next month I'll have 2 years clean. And you know, you talk about all the drugs, and I've done them all out there. If it wasn't for the program, I know I'd be in prison or dead. But I think because of the intensity and it kept me going, you know, it led me in the right path. I recently got my GED in March, and I'm in college now. And if it wasn't for the program, I would never have accomplished any of that. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, it saved my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you. A couple other things I want to bring up. Dan and Karen couldn't be here from the Tavern League, but the Marathon County Tavern League, if you guys haven't heard or not, they have a Safe Ride Home program. They offer vouchers to customers to pay for cabs. And I just looked it up the other day, and Marathon County is the second leading user of the Safe Ride program in the state. I think we're behind Milwaukee County, and they have a lot more people, but it is a program that's used effectively. I'm not sure the number of taverns that are a member of the Tavern League, but it is, I know our local Tavern League is a very big supporter and promoter of the Safe Ride programs. That's what they were going to discuss today, but it is something that they're doing to eliminate drunk driving and a great service they can offer to their customers. Now I'm going to turn over to Bob. He's got a couple of things he's going to touch on. So.
Hello everyone, I'm Bob Wilcox. I work for the City of Wausau Police Department. I just wanted to touch on one thing. I am currently the domestic violence officer for the City of Wausau Police Department. And Mark had talked about alcohol involved in domestics, and just an interesting fact I've been tracking since the beginning of the year on my stats, 45% of our domestics have had alcohol involved in some way. It's a little lower than we thought it would be, but it's still almost 50%, so it does, have an effect in there. The first area I'm going to talk about is compliance checks. There's two different types of compliance checks we do in law enforcement. We have the undercover people that go in and try and purchase alcohol from either a tavern or a convenience store. Generally what happens with that is you'll have an undercover officer who will be a witness to it. They will be in the location when the underage people go in and attempt to purchase, and there will also be at least one other officer outside monitoring. We generally try and use 18 and 19-year-olds. They do allow you to use people under 18, but we don't, just because of liability and it's a bigger risk and stuff. So generally we use the adults. We try and use the 18 and 19-year-olds because they tend to look a little younger. We don't want to use somebody that's 20 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks old. That's 2 weeks from turning 21. We don't use males with facial hair because they tend to look older. What the underage people will do is they will go into a location that's designated. The officer will go in at first, the undercover, and just make sure the environment's safe. There's no other issues there. The underage people will go in and try and purchase. They are not allowed to lie. If the person asks them, are you 21, they have to tell them, no, I'm not. And if they use any identification, it is their actual identification. We don't give them any fake IDs. We're not trying to trick people in that aspect. Generally what they'll do is they'll go in, they'll ask to be served. If the person asks for ID and they give it to them and decline them, a lot of times the person will just tell them they have to leave. We've had instances where the person, the convenience store clerk or the bartender has called law enforcement. Usually the officer outside will try and monitor that and go in and take care of the situation on hand. But then once they are served, they don't drink, they will get up and leave, and then the undercover officer will leave later. And then at some point, the person will be cited. The officer will go back, depending on the night and how busy it is and stuff. A lot of times they try and go back in right away, but sometimes they may just get identification and go back at a later time and cite the person and talk to them. We generally do it, the underage, about once a month. During the summertime, it's a little harder to get volunteers. A lot of times we use criminal justice students. Some officers, children have done it. My daughter did it when she was 18 and 19. And just with the summer, sometimes it's a little harder to get the volunteers, so we haven't done any in the last couple months. But generally, it's about once a month they try and go out and do those. With both compliance checks, the ones I'm going to talk about earlier, and the underage person going in, we try and even it out as far as who we get. We don't go back to ABC every time, and they try and even those out so that everybody is getting a compliance check and we can document that. The only time that we may hit a place more is if we're getting more information that they are selling to underage people, or if we're getting complaints with the other type of compliance check that there's unlicensed people, then we may check those a little more frequently. But they do have people that track those. With the underage persons, we generally work with the other jurisdictions, Everest, Metro, Rothschild, and then sometimes there's one or two teams, depending on how many people that'll go out and hit certain areas. The second type of compliance check we do is bar checks. We have a lieutenant on our night shift that tracks those and who we checked and when we checked them. They will do those monthly, depending on staffing. Basically what that is 2 or 3 officers will go in, what they're checking for, and we're allowed to go into the establishments and check, and if they refuse, they could get their license suspended or revoked. What they are checking for is to make sure that they have proper posting of license, whether Class A or Class B. With the bars, they're checking to make sure that there's a licensed bartender on scene that is either working or directly supervising any unlicensed person, because you can have people that are unlicensed bartenders, but they have to be in direct supervision. Sometimes where we have issues with that is, say, a country bar where there's maybe an apartment attached and the unsupervised person is out there, and the licensed person says, I'm going to go back and watch the Brewer game, call me if there's any problems. That's technically not direct supervision. They have to be in line of sight. So they will check for that. They will also, if they see any underage persons, they may check them for identification to make sure that everybody is of age. I think that is it for the compliance checks. The other area that I'll talk about is responsible beverage server and law enforcement alcohol server training, LEASE. Responsible beverage server is a course that is offered at the TAC once a month. It's a 4-hour course that gives you a big long list of laws, accountability, identification checks, a lot of things that you come into as far as being a server. You can also take the course online and accomplish the same thing. Where we got involved with it, the health department and I, was a couple years ago. They kind of retooled the responsible beverage server, and they work with us. Andy Kleppy is the one that teaches it at NTC. and kind of updated the curriculum, to make sure that they're current. And what the thought was is that, in talking with Andy, it would be nice because the health department comes in and does about 20 minutes, about a 20-minute section on alcohol serving size and safe drinking. So that gives them a little different perspective, about some of the health aspects, and really opens eyes. And it's interesting because those guys go in 5:30 or so, and then I do my portion at usually about 7:15 at night. I come in, and it's right after a break. And if the class is there, I'll talk to some people and say, hey, did you learn anything interesting? And you'd be amazed how many people say that serving size thing was very, very interesting, and they learned a lot because, there's a lot of people I know that have stopped going to restaurants because they get 5 ounces of wine in a 12-ounce glass and they think they're getting ripped off, and actually they're getting a serving size and they don't realize it. So when you kind of educate them on it, that is interesting. And I do about a 15 or 20-minute portion. And what Andy's thinking is that there's a lot of questions. That he works in law, he's worked in law enforcement in the past, and he's a reserve deputy now, but he's not, the day-to-day. And so he wants to have somebody in there that can talk to about how things are going on the street, as of today, and also any questions they have. The areas that I will cover with them will be identification checks to teach them about the new IDs, what things they can look for to check, questions they might have, if somebody's hesitant or they don't, they are suspicious, they are allowed to hold anything they think is fake, altered, or borrowed, so we train them on that. If you think it's fake, altered, or borrowed, you're allowed to confiscate that as long as you call us at some point. We talk about the 2 types of compliance checks, and obviously the sting, the underage person, we get a lot of questions on how we can legally do that. And I liken it to when we buy drugs or have an informant buy drugs, there is procedures that we have to follow and monitor. Then I will talk about problem patrons. And basically, years ago, the Pine Bar was kind of our first area with that, where they would try and handle problems themselves, and they would not call law enforcement. And then our calls for service from the people around the area, third-party neighbors and stuff, with shots fired and criminal damage and fights and stuff, were coming in, and they basically would just push them out the door and say it's not our problem anymore. So we went into it, we tracked how many calls, and we eventually got the place shut down, and as you see now, the building's been torn down, so we did really good with that one. But then there was another bar on Kent Street that we kind of had the same issue, where they would have fights happening, people would be intoxicated, passing out, and they would just kind of push them out and say, well, it's not our problem, now they're out the door. Well, again, you get, the fights, the broken glass, you get somebody peeing on Florence's petunias, and she'd be calling. So we said that is your problem, because that person, call us and be proactive rather than reactive. Because if we're getting third-party calls, and if the argument that I always get from people is, well, we don't want the police in here because it's bad for business. And I said, well, if you lose your license, you aren't going to have a business. So, it's better to work with us. We do the law enforcement alcohol server training is a little bit more, it's probably more of an overall encompassing of the responsible beverage server training. We will talk about liability, intoxicated people, those types of things, do the ID checks and what have you with that. And we've done it, we always say we'll do it one-on-one. We've never had to do it two-on-one or one-on-one yet, but some of the groups that we've done, some civic groups, we did like the Optimists, the VFW, who serve at the fair. We've, I'm trying to think who else.
Athens Fair.
Athens Fair, you guys did. Also with some of the Tavern League has hosted some of that, and it's a nice refresher for people that haven't gone through RBS for years. It's kind of nice, especially with the IDs changing. You look at something and if you look at it, you don't know what to look for, so it's nice for them to know that. We also have worked with establishments, and there's one that I can think of that we did a couple years ago that had multiple violations in 2 weeks, and we offer that now to the owner. We said, hey, if you want, we'll come in and talk to your staff. And so we went in, and Renee Trowbridge and I did a training there, and I don't think I've seen a violation at that business since then. So either they're doing really good covering it up, or They're following the rules. Because there was a simple thing like open after hours. It says employees only. Well, they had a group of like 7 employees that were having a party after hours. Well, employees only means the people that work the shift before closing. It doesn't mean everybody that works there. They didn't realize that. They thought we're all employees, we can come in and have a drink, and it's not a big issue. So just educating them on it. And a lot of the owners are real receptive too, because if they can show they're trying to take proper steps to address the issue. And the one thing I tell them is get to know the officers that work your area, because if you get a relationship, it might be a phone call, you know, even to them to say, hey, we got this issue, and you can talk to over on the phone where they don't even have to come in and deal with it. Or the officers might say, no, let me, you know, come deal with it. So it's been a very positive program, and hopefully it'll continue, and we'll get all the civic groups in the county that serve alcohol to partake.
Thanks, Bob. I actually, like Bob said, I get the privilege of doing the least and RBS trainings with him, and the response is great. I mean, a couple weeks ago we did the VFW, and I think we had over 25 people, and it's just nice to have the conversation, answer their questions, you know, help them out with problems before they happen. So if you're interested, or you are in a community group or whatever it may be, and does serve alcohol at an event or fair, whatever it is, you know, we'd love to get you trained in. So the last thing we're gonna touch on here is another tool that we have in our community is the social host ordinance.
Good afternoon. Aaron asked me to talk about the social host ordinance, and for those of you that don't know, the social host ordinance is, it penalizes anybody that provides a location for underage drinking to take place. So it's not necessarily they provide alcohol, but they provide that location. That location could be their home, could be their cabin, it could be their hunting land, it could be their camper, it could be any place where 3 or more people can gather. And within Marathon County, we actually have about 60% of our population covered. In October of 2011, Wausau was the first municipality in central Wisconsin to pass that ordinance. Quickly thereafter, Weston passed in December of that year. Cronin-Wetter and the county board passed it in February. And with the county board passing it, that means it includes all those unincorporated areas throughout the county. That doesn't mean it includes municipalities like Athens or Spencer or Stratford. They have their own police jurisdiction. So we are still working on those municipalities to see if they too would also like to have this ordinance. Schofield and Rothschild had also passed in the spring of 2012. Since it's passed, we've had over 20 citations written. It ranges from between, I think Cronin-Wetter is the lowest at $500. There's a range. It's $500 to $5,000 in Cronin-Wetter. Here in the city of Wausau, it's $1,000 to $5,000. Like I said, we've had over 20 different citations here locally. And with this ordinance, when we were putting it out there, everybody knows that underage drinking is a problem here in our community. There are things, like Bob said, that we do to make sure there's safe sales of alcohol at retail establishments, but when you look at social access through family members, friends, you know, older peers, that's really the tougher nut that we had to crack, we had to address, because that's where many youth in our community were getting their alcohol. And like has been said before, the earlier that you start, the more likely they are to have issues with alcohol as adults. You know, latest statistics is you're over 6 times more likely if you start before the age of 15, no matter who you're drinking with. So this was definitely a huge concern for us. And with that social access to alcohol, we wanted to make sure that the penalties were stiff. We actually used a template that was used throughout the state to get ours kind of off the ground. But it is really kind of a unique and interesting ordinance. It really helps address, you know, a centuries-old problem here in the 21st century. And out actually on the table, there is a resource, little kind of fact sheet on the social host ordinance. So if you're not aware, I invite you to take one of these. We also have little postcards that are red that could just kind of lay out the penalties. So definitely, if you have anywhere where those can be distributed, please, we have more. Grab as many as you'd like. And this fact sheet is available on the website for download. One thing to remember with social hosts, though, like I said, it doesn't penalize, you don't have to provide the alcohol to be cited under this ordinance. It doesn't duplicate state law. It's still illegal to sell alcohol to a minor. It's still illegal to give alcohol to a minor. It doesn't eliminate parents' rights. They can still give alcohol to their own children as much as they want, but they just can't be giving it to anybody else's. And it's not a witch hunt. This is a municipal forfeiture. It's not creating any criminal offenses. You know, it's not meant to create more undue burden on law enforcement. The truth of the matter is, when they get called to an underage drinking party, this is just one more tool for them to use when they get there to hold the person that provided that location accountable. And actually, Wally, would you like to come up and tell the story of Weston's first social host ordinance?
Well, Mark can cover it up there.
Okay, Mark.
The one at the IMR VP.
Do you want to come up here so they can get you on tape? We've actually got a number of stories. While he's on the way up here, one of the latest ones from the city of Wausau was usually it's a noise complaint. They got called to this noise complaint, and as they came in, they could hear screaming upstairs, a man and a young male and a young female screaming. So they broke down the door, and people started flooding out the windows. And this home, I believe there's a 19-year-old mother, she had a 9-month-old infant in the home as well as this party was going on, and they issued about 16 underage drinking citations at that party. And she received a social host as well. So that's just one story.
Yeah, some of you may have followed in the news, about a month ago, we had one of the gas stations on Schofield Avenue, the IMR BP station. Somebody smashed through the front door, and they had a couple of masked kids come in. And well, that was stemming from our first underage social host party. They ran out of beer and cigarettes, so a couple of them wandered over there and threw a brick through the window and took some stuff back to the party, which we followed up on later. They talked about the cost, and you got some great examples of this, but alcohol is a huge factor relating not only to other crimes, the driving and some of these other things, but you touched on our gentleman that's gone through this program, and it leads to other drugs, and all that ties into crime. It has such a huge connection, all the activities. It impacts our community in a lot of ways that people don't realize. They start with alcohol, and why do we focus a lot on the youth? Why do we focus on social hope? Because we don't want those kids going down that path. People talk alcohol, it's kind of a gateway drug. There's some people that can drink socially, but for kids, it's not good. It leads to marijuana, it leads to harder drugs, and then it leads to criminal activities that support those habits. So it impacts a lot of facets of life. So any steps that we can take. And for those of you who have gathered a lot of information here, I would urge you to get involved. Talk with Melissa, find out some stats that you can help with. But being aware, part of this is educational. The other part is, what can we do? What can we correct it? We had a meeting last week, and informally just to discuss possibly starting a drug court, similar to what they have for the OWI court. And I think that would be a fantastic idea. It's a lot to put together, and then. But taking those steps where you can take people and try it, the recidivism rate, for all criminals is extremely high right now. Recidivism rate for alcoholics and people those addicted to drugs. So we need to take those steps to try and keep them from being in that revolving door. So programs like the OWI court, programs like the drug court, Ron Exone works through treatment instead of prison. We want to stop these behaviors, and we want to rehabilitate people so we can reduce those costs and impact our community.
Yeah, just got to finish up one thing quickly. That was a perfect segue. Perfect segue into what else we can do. This I wanted to mention quick. As part of our impaired driving efforts, there's the National Alcohol Crackdown. It's going to be August 16th through September 2nd. So local law enforcement is participating in that. There will be opportunities for local media to do ride-alongs. So this is something you'll hopefully see in the press and see in the news as well. And lastly, I just want to get to what else can we do? And Wally really just summed it up nicely about how our communities have control. I mean, we can decide, law enforcement, our city government can come together to really impact our alcohol culture. And so one thing I want to touch on quickly, in Wisconsin, municipalities have the ability to and authority to create a positive alcohol environment. So our municipalities have the ability to control the number, location, operational standards for licensing alcohol sales. That means that our village boards, our town boards, our city councils can determine where alcohol outlets can be. So a couple of examples that I found from the Village of Oregon, which is in Dane County, is in their alcohol licensing language is that no Class A license can be issued to any premises where prescription medication is sold. So I know we've done some environmental scanning locally at Walgreens, and we have the new CVS pharmacy that you can buy alcohol at these places. And so the Village of Oregon, they said they created an ordinance that says you cannot sell alcohol at these locations. And so I just wanted to kind of end with that point. I have a couple of examples, but locally we have the ability to control where alcohol is sold. And so another example would be limiting sales of single-serve alcohol beverage containers. So a couple of examples here, you have the 40-ounce beers or the 24-ounce malt beverages. The Village of Oregon again wrote into their alcohol licensing ordinance, no premises where gasoline is sold may sell single servings of fermented beverage. So that means any gas station cannot sell these single serves. And if I'm not going to do this around, but if you look at those maps that I created, you'll see all the different convenience stores that sell alcohol, that sell these single serve containers. So lastly, again, municipalities can limit or prohibit alcohol use on public property, including parks and recreational areas. So I'm sure we all know about the 400 block downtown, that there is, you can legally have alcohol at the 400 block. And I know there's been some recent coverage about people down there drinking, but that's the city of Wausau's decision. If they decided that they wanted to have alcohol on the 400 block, they can also decide to prohibit. So it's just one of those issues, especially when we talk about moving, our alcohol culture, is our city leaders, our county officials can play a hand in our alcohol culture. So any questions? We have just over 5 minutes. Any questions for anyone up here? All right.
And Laura had to step out for another meeting,
Yeah,
so if
sure.
there's any follow-up questions with her, she's available after 3 o'clock today.
So I said earlier we're going to touch on this, but our next impaired driving short-term action team is going to meet about 2 weeks from now on Monday, August 19th at the Wausau PD. So what we've done with that group, we have developed a plan, a work plan using community-based best practice strategies. And so some of them we touched on today with kind of what we're doing, but we also have other places we need to go, other things we need to do. So I encourage you to attend that meeting if you can. We'll be sure to send out updates as well, but thanks for coming.